like it was. Strange roads, strange souls, taking balls where they are called. Every time, every sign, every line, every crime, every time, and every sign, every line, and every.
Warrior Charge have been making their unique sound since 2006. Their debut album, No Foundation, was a long time in the making, as the powerhouse rhythm section duo Wayne Noons and Perry Melius explain.
I've not long come back to England, and I used to work in Eddie Grant's studio quite a bit, and the keyboard player said he had this gig, and in the GLC, it was a Calypso gig, and the drummer, Perry was the drummer on the gig. That's how we met.
I understand what you mean. Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's pointless
yeah,
us
yeah.
playing because like we're just wasting time.
So what you,
if we're the vocalist, that's what he's going to start using.
Okay,
But
yeah.
we're playing.
Oh, that's the beginning of the song.
Yeah.
Wayne was doing recording and programming, hence him working in Edit Studio.
Yeah.
And he just asked me if we want to get together, do some programming initially, and we just got round.
Yeah, we programmed before we played together.
Yeah, at his place, and that was it. And from then it was went on. Yeah.
The name of the band is taken from one of their favourite artists, as Perry describes how the project came to fruition.
Well, we decided that we'd worked for so many different artists that it would be great to use all those influences and get a project for ourselves rather than be in the rhythm section for so many different people. We decided let's do a project for ourselves, and we said let's call it Warrior Charge. Let's do because it stemmed from one of our favourite songs, one of our favourite bands, Aswad, Warrior Charge. So we just called it Warrior Charge basically just for the sake of it. And then, then from that, we just started collaborating together. And then we just put everything, in kind of one pot, as they say. All the musical influences we had over the years in one pot. And we came out with this project we're doing now, with the Warrior Charge sound, basically. We're still kind of friends and still keeping it out and doing that now. So we're still but that was for about, say another 6-7 years. Just learning off of them, learning what they do, how they do it. And it basically stems back to their old stuff, you know what I mean? Listening to all their old music and stuff like that. It's a big part of the Warrior Charge influence as well, So yeah.
Kingston Brandy. You're on peg. You're on peg. On peg. You're on peg.
Their initial recordings were greeted with great enthusiasm, as several key industry people helped them with their first release.
We were touring in Japan at the time, and this guy that we knew for years, we seemed to, we met him with any band we kind of played with in Japan. He was always kind of looking after it, and we played it to him. And when we got back home, he called us and he got it. He knew exactly what, he understood what we were trying to do. Was very, I wanted to put it out. So we were kind of quite lucky with that. The first album, this friend of ours, who is a friend of ours now, he thought he should put it out, and he named the album, which was it was like doing gigs with somebody else. The first album is called No Foundation, No House, and we were doing a gig with somebody else. We were doing a gig and we went to dinner, and the guy said, oh, he was saying how good the gig was, and he said, you know, Wayne and Perry, they're the workers, and he said, well, no foundation, no house, and that's where the whole title of the album came from.
Being an independently funded operation has added some complications to promotion, as Wayne describes how they went about getting the message out there.
We've done 2 gigs. No, maybe a bit more. Yeah, we've done maybe a bit more, but we did like, how many gigs in Japan? When we first released the album, we did a ton of press, and we did like 3 gigs, and they were really, we did a festival and we did a club gig. I think we did a festival and 2 club gigs, and they were really, really successful. And then when we got back to England, we had like a soft release of the same album, and didn't gig much then. We almost immediately started making another record, and we did a few gigs then, and then more the same up to now. You know, we did a second album, which is a kind of a soft release as well. And we've been doing a few gigs here and there.
And the two feel they never stopped learning and growing from their initial influences, which is how the sound ultimately came into its own.
Don't know who we are, can't really tell. We do the council flats and we do some jail.
Well, like Perry said, it's almost like our kind of blueprint. It's almost, it has, you know, everything that we've done through the years. It's got influences from from lots of different things. So, you know, Perry might go off. When we just started doing it, I think Perry played with, we both played with Tricky. Perry played with Tricky just before. And we played with African Head Charge before, or still do. I mean, we still kind of play with everybody we've ever played with. We got a good relationship with everybody we've kind of worked with. So, you know, from time to time, we'd always get that call, you know, to do those gigs. But he went off to do Tricky, and I went off to work with Jeb Lloyd Nichols, who was like a Southern soul kind of, and had lots of country influence in his stuff. And we managed to bring lots of that to the table as well, you know. So like, you know, Perry'd have some beats, and then I could go off and bring a totally different thing that I never would have thought about before without working with Jeb. Because that whole, it was like the whole guitar world, and, you know, touring America and seeing that whole other side of it. And the venues that we were playing, you know, we were playing like you know, really Southern venues and Nashville, and so it opened up a whole new musical thing for us.
Taking their cue from the renowned experimental rapper Tricky, they have veered away from having a permanent lead vocalist. Here's why.
Well, that was like Tricky's idea. When we met Tricky, we were doing stuff, and we always had problems with singers, divas, singers. You know. So yeah, I guess that's what makes them what they are. You know, but we had this problem where we did a few more projects before Warrior Charge, and from time to time the singers would like let us down on the last minute, or, you know, become bigger than the project. You know, and he said, look, you guys are the thing, you should do this project and do it like me, never have a, you know, one singer, just get different people, and, you know, so the project remains yours kind of thing. So nobody, you know, you're not kind of being held to ransom by anybody.
turns herself into sky. A warrior learns how to die. Stops asking why. Warrior learns how to live. Starts to forgive. Warrior understands what she is. A bunch of consciousness. And when she's dust, she'll know it all. The truth is in the fall.
This has given them the freedom to work with different people and have some heavyweight guests as well as up-and-coming artists featured on the albums.
Anybody, we, you know, if we go to a club tonight and we think, oh, that person is cool, we'd ask them to sing, and you know, we think, oh, it'd be nice to do a track with them, yeah. You know, so, and what happened on the first album, we went to people that we worked with before, so we had like Brinsley Ford, we had Tricky, of course, and then we had this unknown girl singer, Beatrice Brown, and lots of people showed interest in her. So in the second album, we used her a lot more, and we had David McCalmont, who's another good friend of, you know, we've known, you know, lots of friends and people we've worked with, you know, who we think would suit the project.
笑って泣いて困らせちゃ時々ごめん時々ごめん甘えてちきて困らせちゃ時々ごめん時々ごめん
The current lineup features Japanese-born vocalist Yuki Musada.
She actually came down to a Warrior Charge gig, and she came down to the gig, and then straight after the gig, she just came up and said she really liked the sound and liked what was different, and was interested in working with us. And then we just said, yeah, well, let's just get a date, let's get together and work. And she was quite surprised how, you know, we just said, yeah, let's do it. And then from that, we just made the two songs that we've got with her now, and you know, and it's going really well with her. She's doing really well, and it's sounding great. So it's just from basically meeting her at a gig, basically.
Scrapers fill the air, but will you keep on building higher till there's no more room up there? Will you make us laugh? Will you make us cry? 'Cause will you tell us when to live? Will you tell us when to die?
So how did the two of them start in the business we call show?
I think it's just like everybody else, man. It's like you just, you know, whether it be athletics, football, music, you tend to have, it tends to draw your natural energies to you know, like drums, I could just pick up some sticks and play it. So my natural energy was to you know, to sit in my room every day and just play drums, because that's what I enjoyed, you know, and from then it just became a regular for me, you know, and I was lucky enough to you know, either buy, you know, work with some really good people, and I've always kept working with good people. So yeah, it was just basically, you know, like most people, as I say, it just draws you into that, whether it be an instrument, whether it be athletics, whether it be, you know, solicitor. You generate that feeling for that passion. That's what I mean, you know. So that's what happened to me. I just kept, you know, practicing at home, and then worked from one act to an act to an act, and I've been really fortunate enough to do that.
What was your first sort of band then?
My first band was like, you know, I used to play in the social clubs with my cousins and stuff like that, and then I just got my first major band was with doing Bad Manners, and I did that for like 2 years solid, yeah, like, you know, gigging every day, and it was an eye opener, you know what I mean? Seeing what, yeah, it was definitely an eye opener. But yeah, that was my first band, and yeah.
Okay, one more time. Okay. And it's got the tag at the end.
Yeah. And then.
Well, I kind of had there's a lot of music around me at home. My mum sang, and my brother sang, and you know, it was just kind of and then they knew a lot of musicians, and my sister went out with a singer, and I just loved the whole band thing. I just wanted to. I used to, you know, like sneak out at night and go and listen to the bands, you know, hear them play. And then I always wanted to, but I had a period of time when I sang in a church choir, and not gospel. I sang in like a Church of England choir. And when I was like at primary school, so I was earning a living from music when I was at primary school. I was singing at weddings and funerals, and I would get paid to sing at church services every Sunday, but it was all really classical, and you know, I loved that stuff, and it kind of stayed with me later on, because I always love, even now in the studio, doing vocals, because, you know, that whole sense of harmony thing comes back, you know, because when you sang in the choir, you were like, you moved along according to your height. So when when you're short, you had like altos behind you. As tall, you had bass, and the bass thing always stuck in my head. And I always thought, when I get older, I'm gonna sing in the choir. I'll sing, you know, bass in the choir. But then the whole, you know, that whole thing fell out, and I was more interested in the whole band thing. So I started playing. I just turned up. My first thing I did playing, my first bass playing thing I ever did was a recording in Guyana, which was weird. Somebody said, "Oh, you could play," and we went to do this recording, and there was this Indian song that's still kind of played in Guyana now. But that was my first time I ever played it in a band. And then the second gig was at the school, my secondary school. But after like 2 songs, we were like told not to go near to the equipment again. So that was the end of that. And I stopped playing for ages. But there was another bass player at my school, and he said, "No, don't, you know, keep going." And that was that whole thing. So, but that was all in Guyana. And then I ended up playing with a band in Guyana that was really successful. And then I came back to England in like 1983, 1984, and had to do it all over again, because I'd come to somewhere nobody knew who I was. So I had that whole thing of deciding whether I should continue or start all over again. So yeah, and I from my Guyanese connection, I hooked up with Eddie Grant's studio, Eddie Grant's brother in Eddie Grant's studio. So and during that time, I had a few years of not gigging but learning the whole recording craft. In the time when it was all kind of analog, and lots of people would come there to record because, you know, Eddie had a lot of hits and people wanted that kind of vibe. So I played on a lot of those recordings for people who came over from all over the world who wanted to record in there. And engineered, you know, learned to engineer records and that kind of thing, yeah.
She gone.
Okay, let's try again.
Although Wayne and Perry use a lot of sampling and programming, their admiration for old-style production and recording and writing remains as strong as ever.
Production, if you look at the production, say, back in late 70s, early 70s, late 70s, you know, up into the 90s, production was great, you know. I mean, production was part and parcel of a great song.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So production back then, you look at Motown, if you strip most of those songs away from the great songs that were made, the production on some of those Motown songs, and even, you know, Stax songs, even the great examples like the Marley stuff, you strip Bob's, you know, vocal away from that, production was great, you know, and you can't say as much as today's production because it's just an MPC beat or just a computer beat.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's difficult to I mean, to today's music, you got people like, you know, probably Ed Sheeran and Dizzy and stuff like that, that making great beats and you know, beat-based music. That's what I mean. That's how I call it. You know what I mean? With great hooks on top. You know, so it kind of works its own way out in. Sorry, Andy. Sorry. Yeah, but it kind of works its way out through time, basically. But it's a good question because I think production has gone. With time, it's moved on. In whether it's in the right direction or the wrong direction, but with time, it moves on. You know what I mean?
Their philosophy is all about less is more, and not trying to show off their dexterity at the expense of the record.
I don't think lots of good musicians equal a good record. I think a good producer will make a good record with anybody if he can get the best out of those guys. Because, I mean, it's sometimes it's a nightmare going to a studio with a lot of, great musicians, who don't understand production. I think it's a field in itself, and I don't even know if you need to be. Long ago you had producers who were arrangers as well, so they knew the whole thing. They could see the whole thing to the end. But then there's some amazing guys who've got really good vision, who make some really great records, and they will make it with. They'll probably make it better with guys who are not such great players. I think a lot of the time, maybe not in America, maybe here in England. America, you've got some great players who've worked in a lot of studio situations and have understand production. And whereas in London, you've got a lot of great players who've never really been into the studio, have never made a record, and you try and get them in on a session, and it shows right away. Is that they're trying to make their own record, and they need a producer to kind of.
Yeah, but on the other hand, that's right what Wayne's saying. But on the other hand, you've got someone like Tricky. He just sees colours and pictures and paintings. He don't see chords. He doesn't see. Yeah. He just sees a beautiful, textures.
He sees the whole thing.
He sees textures, and by the end of it, it's just textures. So, and that's to me, that's a genius. Yeah. Because he just sees textures. He doesn't see chords, and by the time he's finished, it's a beautiful piece of music. So, that's what I'm saying. It differs. He probably wouldn't have. It's different eras. I think different eras of time as time goes past.
Well, he's a typical example. If he played, he probably wouldn't be as good as he is.
Still tricky, really, for me personally, because just at a young age, working with him for like, 10 years, and watching him put music together without any fear, that kind of rubbed off on me big time.
Periods rather than artists, like, there are periods when music was kind of really, lots of great periods in music, 70s, 80s, There's some great stuff now, but there was so much stuff then that we still listen to now. And it's of no particular kind of genre. You know, I like loads of different things. It didn't matter who you know, what the song was. And if it's a good song, I liked it. And that's partly from me growing up on a like radio culture. I lived in Guyana, so there was no kind of, I couldn't see any of these people or read about them in the, you know, local, whatever it is, of where they were the night before. It was purely of listening to the radio, and anything we liked, we played. Yeah, people will ask us both as like we're one person, because we've been doing it for so long, you know what I mean?
Tricky said to us, the first thing he said was that, oh, this is the British Sly and Robbie. The first thing when we, you know, he quoted in a magazine saying, oh, this, you know, we're the kind of British Sly and Robbie. We don't look at it like that, but you're going to get naturally compared and you know, stereotyped. No, which is great, man. You know, Sly and Robbie are my idols, you know. So, yeah, your natural rhythm sections are going to get that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but rhythm section was, I think we actually did a rhythm section interview for Bass Player and for Drum magazine, which was really good. And it's a shame that they don't do more. But there are not a lot of rhythm sections, but there've always been rhythm sections in the 70s, and, you know, and it's come from having band players, really. So two guys have been playing in a band for a long time, and that's what makes their record sound really good. Because, you know, the core of it is sound, you know, they understand one is not trying to outplay the other, or one is amazing, one, you know, that kind of thing. Or, you know, it's understanding that whole, you know, understanding that if you listen to lots and lots of records, that sound that we dance to with guys who've been playing together for a long time, you know, like a bass player and a drum, well, a whole band, but the rhythm section thing was a really big thing. This is a double chorus without
the tag.
it doesn't have that B flat thing at the end.
It has it in the second one. Yeah.
Yeah, like the thing. Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out.
How has the industry changed since their earnest beginnings?
People took a lot more chances and stuff, and we're so kind of abstract that, you know, there ain't that many people who want to take a lot of chances. But what we do know is that if we keep doing it, it's going to stick, because the type of bands that we've played with have been doing that stuff for ages. We've been playing with kind of bands that are not on the beaten track for years, you know, like playing Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights to people who just want to come out and have fun.
The two have had a surprising and long-lived association with Stratford Theatre. Wayne explains how this came about.
This has been our home for the last
10 years.
Well, more than that. For every Christmas we spend. You can't pan around here because you're not that kind of advanced. In that area behind you, under there, in the pit. Yeah, if you want to see us, you can kind of like bring a torch, and we're under there. Well, we've been doing that for the last 14 years, but in a really good way. Because out of that, we've written 3 of those shows. We've been doing Panto for the last 14 years in the pit, Stratford. Because the other side of what we do, we do some theatre stuff. We've been doing like, you cool? Yeah. We've been doing shows. What was the first one we did?
Jack and the Beanstalk. Oh no, yeah, was it Jack and the Beanstalk?
We did a show in Leeds.
Oh, first show we did. It was called.
Can't remember.
Inner City Jam.
Inner City Jam.
That's
yeah.
what it's called.
We did this show called Inner City Jam, And then the person who wrote the music said, Stratford does Panto, and it's local for you guys. You want to come and do it? And the rest is truly history.
And what are their plans for the future?
Still making music, man. Yeah. Still making music,
Yeah.
man. Still making great music and still playing, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. If the music industry allows you to still make great music.